Mayat and Amin, A Whimsical Eternal Adventure. Chapter 1, The Quiet After the Storm. The air of the new earth did not carry the weight of memory. It smelled instead of rain-washed stone, blooming nightshade, and the iron-sweet tang of old stars cooling in deep pasture. 900 years had passed since the great folding of the sky. Mahat walked with her sandals clicking softly against the pale marble of a dry riverbed. Upon her brow, the single ostrich feather did not quiver. She stopped at a bend in the channel, her toes sinking into grey silt. "The water is gone," she murmured. "Yet the stones remain wet. Why?" No answer came from the ferns, but something in the air changed. Amin was near, a deepening of gravity that made the loose pebbles at Mahat's feet lean toward a single point without her ever knowing where that point truly was. He had not meant to linger. He had felt a goddess's steps cross into this stretch of the new earth, and something in him, curiosity or perhaps simple courtesy toward a fellow keeper of balance, had made him slow rather than pass by unnoticed, as he did with nearly everyone who walked this ground. Mahat did not turn her head, for there was nothing for her eyes to find. She had felt weight like this only twice before, in 900 years. She went very still. "Someone is here," she said aloud. "I don't know you, and yet you feel considerable." Amin gave no answer in words. 3 miles above them, 7 small red stars shifted half a degree left, falling into a cleaner, sharper triangle. Mahat smiled, cautious but pleased. "A gift, then, or an introduction, since you seem disinclined to give me a name." She rose and looked north, toward hills rising like green shoulders against silver cloud. There was no road here. There was only the landscape, and within it, Amin's gravity, unseen and unheard, not yet decided whether to stay. Chapter 2, The Singing Woods of Nod. By the second day, Mahat understood that whatever had greeted her the riverbed had not left. The dry riverbed had widened into a valley where trees hung, suspended by their roots, from invisible ceilings of amber air. Mahat walked beneath them, and Amin's pressure moved with her, never directly ahead, never quite beside her, holding a careful, respectful distance, as though minding his own size around a stranger he did not wish to overwhelm. "You're still here," she said, not displeased. "I confess I expected you to have moved on by now." No answer came, save that above her, 3 shafts of western light bent gently, until they gathered into a soft halo around her white feather, as she stood beneath a large cedar with her eyes closed. Amin did not know why he had done it. He only knew the plume, catching false fire, looked the way he imagined warmth should look, and he had wanted her to feel it. "That is either a very fine trick," she murmured, "or an apology for startling me yesterday." The warmth around her deepened, and Mahat laughed, a short, surprised sound. "I am a goddess of balance," she said, not easily startled. "But I admit, I do not often meet something I cannot name at all." Amin gave no answer. She did not press, sensing correctly that he was still deciding how much of himself to show a stranger. Chapter 3, The Library of Unwritten Names. On the 4th day they came to the place of white bricks, an acre of blank clay tablets laid in rows, straight as a bronze plough's furrow. Mahat knelt beside the first row. "They are waiting," she said, aware of the steady weight that had chosen, for reasons still unknown to her, to accompany her this far. Amin's pressure gathered near the centre of the square, and the dust between the tablets settled into microscopic concentric rings, a pattern too precise to be accidental, though Mahat could never see what caused it. "You have a very careful way of moving," she observed, as though afraid of breaking something, unusual for something carrying as much weight as you clearly do. No answer came in words. A pebble 3 yards away rolled 3 inches left, stopped, and rolled back to its exact starting point. Amin's version of a shrug. "I don't yet know what you are." Mahat sighed slowly. "But I begin to suspect you are not accustomed to being noticed at all." Amin's stillness, in answer, felt like confirmation. "Then let me say this plainly," Mahat continued, lifting a blank tablet, feeling its weight balance itself perfectly in her hands. Amin catching it the instant her fingers closed, so gently she never felt the correction at all. "I do not know your name. I do not know your face, if you have one. But I have weighed 10,000 hearts, and I recognize kindness even without a shape to point to. You have been kind to me these 3 days. I wish to say so." The air around her warmed, faint and grateful. Chapter 4, The Well of Crimson Salt. The ridge opened onto a great circular basin filled not with water but with salt, stained the deep translucent red of a split pomegranate. Mahat sat at the edge of the precipice. Amin's density gathered behind and above her, a weight so complete it made the limestone feel, for a moment, like something listening. "This is where the weight goes," she said, to the basin and to her unseen companion both. "When the prayers are all said and the scales rust to red dust, this is where the balance settles." Below, in the heart of the salt, a single point of light flickered. Amin's own reflection, glimpsing itself in the mirror of the world it held together. "I wonder," Mayat said carefully, "whether that light down there has anything to do with you." Amin thickened the air behind her, and a pebble split down the middle with a sound like a dry twig snapping. "I'll take that as a yes," Mahat said, amused. You still won't tell me plainly what you are, but you'll let me guess, piece by piece. She reached out, testing the air with an open palm. She touched nothing, but the space around her hand warmed, gently, as Amin drew every fraction of his own crushing weight into a stillness careful enough to let warmth near her without ever closing the distance. You're careful with me, she said softly. You could crush this entire basin without meaning to, couldn't you? And instead you're restraining yourself. For a stranger you met 4 days ago. The warmth around her hand held steady, and Ma'at found she did not want to pull her hand away. Chapter 5. The Grey Village. They found the village by its silence, houses in soft rows of unpainted grey, figures moving between them that cast no shadows and made no sound. They are only sketches, Mahat whispered, kneeling beside a boy who rolled a hoop in an endless silent circle. Someone forgot to finish inking them in. Amin's density thickened with something close to anger, restraint, deciding carefully not to press too hard on a world this fragile, even in fury. Mahat trailed her fingers along a doorway, and ochre bled faintly back into the wood. I don't suppose you could help me hold it steady, whoever you are, she said. I have never needed to ask a stranger for help before. She did not truly expect an answer, and so did not see it coming. Amin's gravity spreading low and vast over the entire village, a weight enormous enough to crush the clay houses flat, restrained instead into something no heavier than a held breath. Her ochre spread house by house, warmth returning to wood and thatch. Thank you, Mahat said, startled by the scale of it. I don't think you understand how enormous that felt. She understood, with sudden clarity, that she had been walking 5 days beside something far larger than she'd first guessed. Chapter 6. The Question of a Name. That night, camped beneath a quiet sky, Ma'at gave voice to the question she'd circled since the riverbed. I think it is past time you told me who you are, she said, firm but not unkind. You have held back storms and rebuilt villages and let me hold my hand in air that warms for no reason I can explain. I have met primordials before. None were quite this careful, this powerful, held so tightly in check. Amin's pressure went still, not refusal, but the stillness of something that wanted badly to answer, and had no throat, no voice, only weight and light and small rearranged stones with which to try. A single star trembled, the smallest, most helpless gesture such an enormous thing could make. Mahat's expression softened. You can't tell me, she said. Not won't. Can't. The warmth that answered felt like an apology. Then I withdraw the demand, Mahat said, settling into the grass. I shall be patient, and learn you the slow way, piece by piece. I find I don't mind that nearly as much as I thought I would. Chapter 7. The River That Remembered. They followed a winding path to a river that ran inward, spiralling toward a point where the water vanished into itself. The reeds whispered names in a language older than speech, and some of them, Mahat realized with a slow chill, were her own. This is a river of memory, she said. Not water. Time, wearing water's shape. Amin's density went stiller than she had felt it in 8 days, a stillness with an edge of grief. You know this place, Mahat said. This is not new to you, is it? You stood here long before I ever crossed your path. The reeds bent all at once toward him, the way sunflowers bend toward a sun they cannot see, but always find. At the river's centre, the water brightened to the same translucent red she'd seen in the well of crimson salt, Amin's own old grief surfacing. I think, Mahat said gently, kneeling at the water's edge, that you have carried something very heavy for a very long time, long before I ever entered your existence. I am sorry, I did not mean to disturb an old wound simply by walking near it. The reeds whispered her name once more, softly, like comfort. Chapter 8. The Choir of Unseen Things. The path curved into a valley humming with sound, soft notes rising from stones, flowers opening and closing like patient lungs. Mahat felt, for the first time since the riverbed, that Amin was not alone. Other primordial weights moved through the valley, one that bloom flowers into Riotus, colores it passed, another rippling by like a current of deep water where no water existed. You are not alone out here, Mahat said, delighted. Perhaps one of your kin will be less stubborn about a name. The stones deepened into something like a chord, dozens of pressures layering together, but Amin's density pushed subtly ahead of the others, positioning itself without a word between Maat and whatever the valley might otherwise have held. Maat raised an eyebrow at the empty air. Possessive for someone I've known less than a week. Amin did not apologize. If anything, he held his ground more firmly. I'm not complaining, Mahat said, real warmth in it now. I find I don't mind being looked after by something I cannot see. It has been a long time since anyone thought to guard me at all. She closed her eyes and rested inside the valley's hum, and beside her Amin kept careful, silent watch, already reluctant to imagine these days ending. Chapter 9. What the Feather Remembers. On the 10th night, Mahat held her feather in the starlight. I cannot weigh you, she said to the air. I hold the feather up beside the shape of you in my mind, and it tells me nothing. Not light, not heavy, simply vast. Amin warmed the air around her gently, apologetically. I don't say it as complaint, she added, smiling. I find I am content simply to walk beside it, beside you, whoever you are. Above, the 7 red stars settled into the soft, rounded shape of a single unblinking eye. Mahat slept more peacefully than she had in 900 years. Amin, who needed no sleep, kept watch anyway, simply because he wanted to. Chapter 10. The Garden That Forgot Its Gardener. The path led to a garden withering from its edges inward. A garden needs tending, Mahat said. Someone planted this with great care. Where have they gone? Amin's weight thickened with sorrow, deeper than the grief at the river, a wound clearly never fully healed. This was yours, Mahat said slowly, working it out. Long before we met, and something happened to keep you from tending it since. A golden fruit dropped into her open palm, warm as a held hand, Amin's quiet confession, offered the only way he could give one. Then let us tend it together, Mahat said, kneeling in the grey soil. We only met 11 days ago, old. She paused, catching herself, faintly amused at her own slip. Well, whatever I am meant to call you, but I know a great many things about balance. The soil beside her warmed and settled in a gentle line, and together, one visible, one not, they began, tree by tree, to bring the garden back. Chapter 11. The Weight of a Question Unasked. By the 12th day, Maat had grown used to the rhythm of him, waking to his weight already near, reading his warmth and heaviness like a private language, though she still could not name him. Do you know who I am? She asked one evening. Truly know, not merely feel the shape of a goddess walking near me, but know me. The stars pulsed once, warm and unmistakable. Amin had known her completely since the moment her sandals first touched the riverbed, had known of her, in truth, long before that, the way primordials know all things that move through the world they hold together. Then that is enough, Mahat said softly. For now, that is enough. Chapter 12. The Mirror Lake. On the 13th day, they came to a lake that reflected not the sky, but old memory. A temple, torches, a great crimson light pulsing at its heart. Is this a memory? Maat whispered. Yours? The waiter rippled. Not quite yes, not quite no, but once, long ago, before you and I ever crossed paths. Mahat watched the vision fade and felt, for the first time, the true scope of what walked beside her. Not merely old, but foundational. She sat back on her heels, and her mind, the same mind that had cross-examined 10,000 hearts and never once been fooled, began, deliberately, to work. Let us reason this through properly, she said aloud. You hold rivers to their beds, you hold storms from falling too hard, you anchor gardens, villages, entire skies of stars, and you do it through weight alone, through gravity and nothing else. I have known many primordials in my long existence. None of them command gravity as their whole and total nature. There are not many who do. In truth, I can think of only one. The air beside her did not stir, but she felt it listening, intently, as though it knew what came next. There is a name spoken of, even now, in every hall of every pantheon that survived the judgment, Mahat continued. Spoken with particular reverence, because when the great debate was finally settled, it was his singularity that anchored the whole trembling argument in place, long enough to be heard at all. Absolute gravity, the crimson singularity. She paused. Amin Parker, the lacus surface, brightened at its centre, not into a templatistime, but into a simple, unconcealed pulse of a deep, crimson light. It's you, Maat said softly, and it was not a question. You are Amin. The confirmation came the only way it ever could, not in words, but in a warmth so total it felt, for one impossible moment, like being embraced by the whole sky at once. Chapter 13. A Name Spoken Aloud. Maat sat by the mirror lake a long while, turning the name over in her mind. Amin, she said again, testing its shape. I have heard your name in temples and councils since the judgment ended. I never once thought in 900 years I would find myself sitting beside you in a field, watching the silent hills. The stars pulsed, warm and a little sheepish, and Mahat laughed, a real surprised sound. You could have let me guess sooner, simply by holding still, she said. I think you enjoyed being unknown for a little while. Being simply a presence, rather than a legend everyone already has an opinion about before they ever meet you. The warmth beside her deepened, and Mahat understood she had guessed correctly again. Then I am glad I did not ask outright, she said. I am glad I earned it instead. Chapter 14. What everyone already knew, they walked the next morning, and Mahat found herself smiling at odd moments. Everyone will ask me, when I return, whether I met the great Amin Parker, she said. The one who held the singularity steady through the whole judgment. The one half of every pantheon still speaks of like a hero out of an old song. She glanced toward the empty air beside her. They will want to know if you were exactly as the stories say. Amin's presence stirred, curious. I shall tell them the truth, Maat said. That you are exactly as vast as they say, and exactly as gentle as they never think to mention, that the songs get the weight of you right, but they miss the part where you rearrange 7 stars, just because a goddess asked a question aloud to no one. 14 days ago, at a dry riverbed. The grass beneath her warmed gently. in a way she had learned over 15 days to recognize as something close to a blush. "You needn't be shy about it, Amin," she said, laughing softly. "I know who you are now. There's no more hiding the size of you." The 7 stars pulsed once, warm and steady, settling into the unmistakable shape of a smile. Chapter 15. The Cliffs of Unfinished Sky. On the 16th day, the path led them somewhere unlike anywhere they had walked before, to the edge of a cliff where the ground simply stopped, and beyond it nothing but a vast gap of pale, unpainted sky, as though the world itself had not yet decided what should fill the space between one hill and the next. Mahat knelt at the edge and peered down. There was no bottom she could see, only a soft, endless grey, the colour of a page waiting for its first stroke of ink. "This is not a cliff that ends in rock," she said slowly. "This is a cliff that ends in unfinished." Amin's pressure gathered close beside her, thick with old familiarity. This was his kind of wound, a place where the world's foundation simply had not been laid. "I don't suppose there's a bridge," Mayat said, glancing at the empty air, "or a path around, and yet something tells me this is the way I'm meant to go." She rose, considering the gap, then considering the silence beside her. "Then I don't suppose you could carry me across, the way you carry rivers and gardens and villages that forgot how to be whole." For a long moment nothing happened. Then the air beneath her sandals thickened, not into stone, not into any solid thing she could see, but into a density so absolute it felt, when she pressed her foot forward experimentally, exactly like standing on ground. "Oh!" Mahat breathed, delighted. "Oh, you clever thing!" She tested another step, feeling the invisible floor hole beneath her. "You're lending me only a thread of yourself, aren't you? Just enough to walk on, not enough to strain you." The warmth beneath her feet pulsed once, in confirmation, and Mahat laughed, bright, delighted, echoing out across the unfinished sky, and began to walk, step by careful step, across a bridge that existed nowhere but in the gravity Amin had chosen to lend her. Chapter 16. The River of Rising Stone. Halfway across the cliff of unfinished sky, the grey beneath them thickened into something new. A river, but not of water. It was made of small grey stones, and it did not flow downward the way rivers should. It flowed upward, tumbling endlessly toward a horizon that curved skyward instead of level, as though gravity itself had forgotten which direction was down. "That is disorienting," Mahat admitted, watching the stones climb past her in slow, lazy arcs. "Even for me. And I have seen a great many strange things in 900 years. She felt Amin's pressure shift beneath her borrowed footing, thoughtful, considering. "This isn't your doing," she said. "Is it? This is broken in a way even you find strange." The stillness beside her confirmed it. "Then let's not fight it," Mayhat decided, crouching at the river's edge. "Let me borrow a little more of you, Amin. Enough to hold my own weight steady, so their confusion doesn't become mine." The density beneath her feet deepened, spreading up around her ankles like an invisible second pair of boots, and when Mahat stepped into the rising river, she did not rise with it. She stood planted and sure, while grey stone tumbled upward all around her, anchored entirely by the small, borrowed portion of gravity Amin had folded gently around her feet. "There," she said, satisfied, wading forward against the strange current. "You needn't hold the whole river steady, old." She caught herself again, smiling at her own habit. "You needn't hold the whole river. Only me. That's a much smaller thing to carry." The warmth around her ankles pulsed, warm and willing, and together they crossed the river of rising stone. Chapter 17. The hollow of falling light. Beyond the river, the land dipped into a wide, bowl-shaped hollow where light fell instead of shone. Long golden shafts drifting down from a colourless sky like slow rain, pooling in soft drifts against the hillside the way snow might pool against a fence. Mahat stepped into it cautiously, and where the light touched her sandals, it clung, weighing her steps down until walking felt like wading through warm honey. "It's beautiful," she said, "and also entirely impractical for someone who needs to keep moving." Amin's pressure pushed gently against the drifts of light nearest her, and where his gravity touched them, the golden shafts bent aside, parting into a narrow, walkable path exactly the width of her stride. "You're clearing a road for me," Mahat said, watching the light curve obediently away from her feet. "Through light, Amin. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that before." She walked the parted path slowly, trailing her fingers through the golden drift at its edge, feeling it hum warm and heavy against her skin without ever slowing her down. "I could grow used to travelling with you," she admitted, more to herself than to him. "Everything that should be difficult keeps becoming, instead, simply beautiful." The light around her brightened, just slightly, in the manner she had learned, over 18 days, to recognise as pleasure. Chapter 18. The Field of Waiting Seeds. They came, on the 20th day, to a field that stretched farther than Mahat's eyes could measure. Countless small mounds of dark soil, each one clearly holding something beneath it, waiting. "Nothing has grown here," Mahat said, kneeling to press her palm against the nearest mound. "Not because the soil is poor. I can feel it. It's rich, ready, patient. It's simply waiting for something." She felt Amin's attention settle over the field, weighing it the way he weighed all broken things, carefully, thoroughly. without rushing to a conclusion. Wait, Mahat said slowly, working it out. That's what a seed needs first, isn't it? Before it needs light or water. It needs to be pressed down, held to the earth long enough to believe the earth will hold it back. The ground beneath her hand grew heavier. Not crushing, never crushing, but present, insistent, exactly as much pressure as new roots might need to feel anchored rather than adrift. Ma'at moved from mound to mound, pressing her palm to each one. And everywhere Amin's gravity followed her touch, small green shoots broke the surface within moments, unfurling toward a sky that had, until now, given them nothing to reach for. By the time she reached the far edge of the field, an entire ocean of green stretched behind her, and Mahat stood at its border, breathless with something that felt very close to joy. We did that, she said softly. Together. I don't think either of us could have done it alone. The field rippled once in the windless air, every new shoot bowing gently toward her, Amin's quiet way of agreeing. Chapter 19. The Chasm of the Unspoken. On the 22nd day, the path narrowed into a chasm so deep that when Mahat dropped a pebble over its edge, she never heard it land. This is not a chasm the earth made, she said, backing carefully from the rim. This is a chasm something tore, on purpose and long ago. Amin's pressure went very still beside her, the particular stillness she now recognized from the river of memory. The withering garden, old grief surfacing again. You know this place too, she said gently, no longer surprised by it. I begin to think there are very few corners of this world that don't carry some part of your history in them, Amin. She sat at the chasm's edge, letting her feet dangle over nothing. You don't have to fix this one today. I remember what you taught me at the broken bridge. Some wounds need to be walked around, not mended all at once. The stillness beside her eased gratefully. But I would like to see the bottom if it's not asking too much, Mahat added. Just to know what's down there, not to heal it, only to understand it. A single careful thread of gravity uncoiled from beside her and sank into the dark, not enough to disturb whatever old grief lived at the chasm's bottom, only enough to carry a small, borrowed weight of light down with it, illuminating, for one brief moment, smooth stone worn soft by centuries of unfallen tears. Mahat looked, and understood, and said nothing more about it, only reached out and let her hand rest in the warm air beside her, the closest thing to comfort she knew how to offer something, with no hand of its own to hold. Chapter 20. The Slope of Sliding Stars. They walked 3 days around the chasm's rim before the land opened into a slope unlike anything Ma'at had yet seen. A hillside so steep it should have been unclimbable. Its surface littered with small glowing stones that shifted and slid, at the Baristouch, like screen made of captured starlight. One wrong step and I'll slide the entire way down, Ma'at observed, testing the slope with her toe and watching a dozen glowing stoners tumble away beneath it. Amin's density spread beneath her feet at once, not lifting her but weighting her, a careful, deliberate increase in her own gravity that settled her more firmly into the shifting stones than her own modest weight ever could have managed alone. Mahat took a step. The stones beneath her held perfectly still, though the ones beside her footprint continued sliding freely away. You've made me heavier, she said, delighted, testing another step. Just heavy enough. Not so much that I feel it as a burden, only enough that the world finally believes I'm me in to stand on it. She climbed the slope steadily, each footstep sinking just enough into the sliding stars to hold, and near the top she paused to look back at the long silver trail of undisturbed stones, marking exactly where Amin's careful gift had carried her. I think, she said, slightly out of breath, that this is the kindest kind of power I have ever been given. Not power that does the climbing for me, only power that makes sure I don't fall while I do it myself. The stars beneath her feet pulsed once, warm and pleased, and together they crested the ridge. Chapter 21. The Orchard of Almost. Beyond the slope lay an orchard where the trees bore fruit that never quite finished ripening. Heavy golden globes that hung eternally on the edge of readiness, neither falling nor rotting, simply waiting. How strange, Mahat murmured, cupping one gently in her palm. It wants to fall, I can feel that much. It simply can't. She felt Amin's attention gather close. Curious, considering. This isn't yours to fix with weight alone, is it? She guessed. A thing that's ready to fall doesn't need to be pulled down. It needs permission. The fruit in her palm trembled, very slightly. Mayat smiled, understanding arriving the way it always did for her. Gently, and all at once. Then let me lend a hand of my own, for once, rather than only borrowing yours. She cupped both palms beneath the fruit and murmured, in the old, dry cadence of judgment, long practiced but rarely needed anymore. You are ready, I declare it so, and there is no scale in this world that would wake differently. The fruit released softly into her hands, and behind her, up and down the long rows of the orchard, hundreds of others followed, a slow and gentler rain of gold falling all at once, finally given leave to be finished. There, Mahat said, laughing as fruit continued to fall around them both. You supply the gravity, Amin. I'll supply the permission. I think that might be a fair division of labour between us. The orchard rustled, warm and full, and somewhere in the golden chaos of falling fruit, Mahat could have sworn she felt something that was, unmistakably, silent and enormous laughter. Chapter 22. The narrows of almost falling. The 26th day brought them to a narrow ledge, cut into a cliff face, so sheer that clouds drifted past below them rather than above. Mahat pressed her back to the stone, edging sideways along a path scarcely wider than her own 2 feet. "I don't suppose you'd like to widen this a little," she said, trying to keep the strain from her voice, and mostly succeeding. Amin's pressure gathered instantly beneath the ledge itself, not widening the stone, but doing something subtler, thickening the air just beyond the path's edge into an invisible, unyielding wall, so that even if her foot slipped, there would be nowhere for her to fall. Mahat tested it, leaning her weight experimentally outward. The air held her, gentle and absolute, and she exhaled a laugh of pure relief. "You built me a railing," she said, "out of nothing at all." She continued along the ledge with new confidence, one hand trailing against the invisible wall the way a child might trail a hand along a garden fence, and when at last the path widened back into solid ground, she turned and pressed her palm flat against the empty air one final time. "Thank you," she said simply. "I don't think I tell you that enough." The air beneath her palm warmed and held for just a moment longer than it needed to. Chapter 23. The Meadow of 2/8. On the 28th day, they came to a meadow so gently sloped, so entirely unremarkable, that Mahat nearly walked through it without pause, until she noticed that her own shadow, for the first time in 28 days, was joined by a second shadow beside it. Faint, barely there, but present. She stopped, staring down at the 2 shapes on the grass. "Amin," she breathed, "is that..." The second shadow did not sharpen into any shape she could call a body. It remained only a suggestion, a deepening of the grass's colour, where light bent slightly around a density too vast to ever fully hide. But it was there, undeniable, cast beside her own for the length of perhaps 10 full breaths, before it faded back into nothing at all. "You let me see that," Mahat said, quiet with wonder. "Just for a moment. You let me see some proof of you, even if it wasn't truly a shape at all." The grass where the second shadow had lain remained warm long after it vanished, and Mahat knelt to press her hand against it, smiling the small, true smile she had learned, over 28 days, to save only for him. "I'll take it," she said softly. "A shadow of a shadow. It's more than most gods are ever given." Chapter 24. The Last Rise. On the 30th day, the land began to climb towards something Mahat could feel long before she could see it, a presence in the far distance, so vast, so bright, that even the 7 red stars overhead seemed to lean toward it in quiet deference. "Is that..." she started, and did not need to finish the question. Amin's pressure beside her grew reverent, hushed, the particular stillness of something ancient standing at the edge of a place, even it regarded with awe. "New Jerusalem," Mahat said softly. The rise ahead of them was steep. The final obstacle of a journey she now understood had never truly been about obstacles at all. She felt Amin gather beneath her feet one final time, not lifting her, not carrying her, only steadying her, the same careful weight he had lent her through cliffs and rivers and slopes of sliding stars. "You don't have to carry me the rest of the way," Mahat said, understanding arriving gently. "This last part, I think, I should walk on my own strength, but I would very much like it if you walked beside me while I did." The pressure beside her eased into something softer than support, companionship offered freely, asking nothing in return. Ma'at began to climb. Chapter 25. What the city looked like from outside. At the crest of the rise, the whole of New Jerusalem opened below them, walls of light too gentle to blind, gates standing permanently open. No shadow anywhere within its bounds, because no shadow was needed where nothing hid. Mahat stood at the threshold a long moment, feeling Amin's presence settle quietly at her side. "You've been to this place before, haven't you?" she said. "Long before you ever met me at a dry riverbed." The stillness that answered was warm, certain, unashamed. "Of course you have," Mahat said, smiling. "You held the singularity steady through the whole of the judgment that made this city possible. I imagine there are very few places in this new world that don't know your name, even if I only learned it 14 days into knowing you." She looked toward the gates, then back toward the empty air beside her. "I want to remember this," she said, "not the city. I've dreamed of walking through those gates since the judgment first began. I mean this 30 days of learning what your name meant, before I ever heard it spoken. I don't think I'll have an adventure quite like this one again." The 7 red stars, faint now against the light of the city ahead, pulsed once, warm and full, in perfect agreement. The end.